Federalist number 20, part 3. The same instrument, says another, obliges each province to levy certain contributions, but this article never could and probably never will be executed because the inland provinces who have little commerce cannot pay an equal quota. Just a reminder, Madison and Hamilton are talking about the weaknesses of the confederacies, whether they are the ancient ones or the modern ones. In Federalist 18, they talk about the confederacies of ancient Greece. In 19, they talk about the Germanic Confederacy. And here in Federalist number 20, they are talking about the Confederacy in United Netherlands. In matters of contribution, it is the practice to waive the articles of the Constitution. The danger of delay obliges the consenting provinces to furnish their quotas without waiting for the others, and then to obtain reimbursement from the others by deputation, which are frequent or otherwise as they can. The great wealth and influence of the province of Holland enable her to effect both these purposes. It has more than once happened that the deficiencies have been ultimately to be collected at the point of the bayonet, a thing practicable though dreadful in a confederacy where one of the members exceeds in force all the rest, and where several of them are too small to meditate resistance, but utterly impracticable in one composed of members, several of which are equal to each other in strength and resources, and equal singly to a vigorous and persevering defense. Okay, let me explain something here. He is saying something, and the people who are reading this understand what he's talking about. He says in Holland, in Netherlands, in United Netherlands, Holland pretty much dominates all the other provinces. He says when one dominates all the other provinces, small provinces, this can go on because nobody's going to challenge that one province. But he says, he doesn't say it about America, but when he says when you have more than one strong province or a state, things will be totally different. You'll have constantly wars. And what he's talking about, he says, for example, here, we've got a few small states or a few states who do not have a large population. But he says when you look at Virginia, Pennsylvania, New York, and Massachusetts, we've got 4 strong and populated states. So this is totally different. Our situation is going to be really, really worse than United Netherlands, because before you know it, we will have war amongst ourselves. Foreign ministers, says Sir William Temple, who was himself a foreign minister, elude matters taken at referendum by tampering with the provinces and cities. In 1726, the Treaty of Hanover was delayed by these means a whole year. Instances of a like nature are numerous and notorious. William Temple had been a minister to the United Netherlands, and he had written a book about his observations upon the United Provinces in 1673. So Hamilton and Madison had this book, and they had read it, and so they were talking about, look, when you read what William Temple had said about United Netherlands, you can learn a lot about it and then apply it to your own situation. That's why they bring him up. In critical emergencies, the States General are often compelled to overleap their constitutional bounds. Okay, this is important. In critical emergencies, the States General, remember that's their parliament, are often compelled to overlap their constitutional bounds. In 1688, they concluded a treaty of themselves at the risk of their heads. The Treaty of Westphalia in 1648, by which their independence was formally and finally recognized, was concluded without the consent of Zeeland. Even as recently as the last treaty of peace with Great Britain, the constitutional principle of unanimity was departed from. A weak constitution necessarily terminates in dissolution for want of proper powers or the usurpation of powers requisite for the public safety. Whether the usurpation, when once begun, will stop at the salutary point or go forward to the dangerous extreme must depend on the contingencies of the moment. Tyranny has perhaps oftener grown out of the assumption of power, called for on pressing exigencies by a defective constitution, than out of the full exercise of the largest constitutional authorities. Okay, let's spend a few minutes talking about this paragraph. He says one of the main problems is when you write a constitution, if you don't write it well enough to give enough power to the government, then there are emergencies that the government has to do things that might be like going beyond what the Constitution allows. So you kind of do something unconstitutional to save the country, or if there's a critical emergency situation, you have to do it. So he says this is one of the big problems with weak constitutions. When you don't make the government energetic enough in the Constitution itself, the government needs to break the law to save the people in times of emergency. And he says sometimes when governments get used to going beyond what they're supposed to, then there's no stopping them. They might just constantly do things that are unconstitutional. So he says it's better to write a good constitution, give the government plenty of power to do its job right, be energetic. Remember, he keeps on using the word energetic, which means a government that can do what it's supposed to do. And he uses the word imbecile or imbecility. It's for a government that cannot do what it's supposed to. So he says, you might think you're not giving enough power to the government in the Constitution. It's a good thing, but it's not. Because if that government feels necessary in times of emergency, it will do something unconstitutional. And once they start doing that, then there's no stopping it. So this is a very important point. That's why they wrote the new Constitution, because they said the old Constitution, the Articles of Confederation, that we 13 states live under, our first Constitution, is weak, is imbecile, does not give government enough energy So if government is confronted with emergency, it has to do something unconstitutional to save you all. So if this keeps on going, then you might have authoritarian government, a tyrannical ruler. So it's better to ratify and accept this new constitution, which gives just the right amount of power to the government to do its job full of energy and to do it competently and fully. So this point is very important.